Hi stamping friends, welcome to the August 2014 online stamp club. I want to give you a few tips before I actually get started making the cards. There will be 6 videos in this series so that you will have some tips and tricks for each card. However, the first thing I want to go over is you will get some very vanilla cardstock and some Whisper White cardstock to do all your stamping on. And in your handout, you will see a map, if you would, or a diagram of the way I like to do all my stamping first. So you'll see which colors of flowers and leaves and everything that you need to go ahead and stamp up front. And then that way you can just take it to the Big Shot and run it through with your flower fair framelits. Yeah, I think that's what it's called. I have to slowly say that. The stamp set that we're using this month is still the Flower Patch, and it is the photopolymer. You do need clear blocks if you're one of our newbies that has just joined us. When you pull the sheets apart, it's pretty sticky, but that's okay. There is a design on one side and then the clear sheet on the other. And then that way it's just easier for you to pull off what you need, stick it on a block. Then when you're done, you just put everything back together and let's see, yeah, like this. They don't have to be perfect, but you just put the sheets back together and store them in the case. The other stamp set that you're using this month is the Fabulous 4. These are not photopolymer. These are actually clear mount. You do need clear blocks for those as well, unless you chose to get this in the wood. And the other stamp that you're using is the hardwood background. I want to show you a few tips on using this. It's a big stamp, and I think if I show you a few things, then you'll have more success. First of all, what you see is the Stampin' Up! Simply Scored, and to use the big background stamp on your card front like you're going to be doing, it's very important to get a good crisp crease. So I'm taking the stylus. There's a fat ball end and a skinny end. You always want to use the fat ball end. Hold it like a pencil. And I want to score this at 4 1/4, just pulling it towards me. And then I will fold it. And you really do, see how it doesn't want to lay down? You really do need to have a bone folder. Giving it a good crisp crease will keep it flat. You'll have much better results. All right, so let me show you using the stamp. The way that I like to do it is to have the stamp facing up and go ahead and ink up the stamp. This way you can see if you've got the whole stamp inked, and if you need to add some more in some spots, then you can do that. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now what I want to do is I'm going to be stamping on the front of some of my cards. I'm going to lay that flat down like that, taking my scrap paper, and I'm basically stamping upside down, if you would. Okay, giving it a good press all over. You can see where I did that before. Okay, and then lifting this off. Ta-da! You have perfectly stamped. Instead of trying to pick up that big bulky stamp and line it up and maybe not get it quite the way you want it, I just find that this is a little bit more successful. Okay, so that's the trick with that. The other trick I want to tell you is when you are using our juicy stamp pads, and they are juicy, there's just no other word for it. These are the new foam type pads. If you find that if you stamp this way and then you stamp on your piece of paper and there's trash is what I call it, then you might find better results, again, if you do some upside down stamping and then taking your stamp to the paper, stamp straight down, lift straight up. Then you won't have any smudges. I don't think you can tell on the stamp, but there's no trash or no extra ink on that stamp if you ink up your stamp that way. Now the next thing I want to talk to you about is stamping using the photopolymer stamps. I just had one of your fellow clubbers contact me. She was using one of the old linen type stamp pads, and you will find that you will not have much success using those stamp pads. You really need to have the juicy stamp pads. Another thing that is very helpful, excuse me, is to use Stampin' Up's paper piercing mat. And if you will put your cardstock on there, I'm just going to grab a color here. Little tickle. All right, again, I like to ink upside down, kind of backwards that way, I guess. And then I'm going to stamp straight down and then lift straight up. You get a much sharper, bolder image when you do that. Another thing I want to tell you about, if you happen to do some stamping where it goes off onto the pad, it cleans off very easily. You can use our Stampin' Mist, wipe it right off, and it cleans up. So don't be afraid to use this pad. It's thicker than a mouse pad per se, but it's just huge with these photopolymer stamps. Okay, let me push all this aside. Excuse me. All right, so our first card I want to show you is this one, and a few tricks with it. See, I've already stamped my card base, and then I have stamped the sentiment on a long strip of paper. And again, when you see your diagram that's in your PDFs this month, you will see what I mean by the diagram on the best way to just go ahead and stamp. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to line this up so that my words are not cut off on the bottom. And I'm going to go ahead and use my snail. Oh, look, did you know that our paper is double-sided? Isn't that great? So if you make a mistake, don't worry about it. Just flip it over and use the other side. That's funny that I did that on the video, but hey, it helps me make the point. Okay, so if you just have it like that, then you can take your snips, and I like to turn it over and just cut that off. It's just the best way to line it up that I have found. Then that way you don't cut off your words. Isn't that cute? Okay, so I do have a little bit of sticking out right here, so let me add a little bit more snail. There we go. Okay, so there's that. All right, so the next part is let's add our pieces, and you have a lot of Whisper White cardstock for you to do this, and the measurements are on your handouts as well. So I have my pieces. I'm going to lay them right there. I have taken and off stamped, so you will see that in your instructions. Go ahead and remove all of these backings, and I'm going to center that on there. Go ahead and put your snail on the back of your card piece. This little square right there. Take this one, line it up. So I am putting snail down on the bottom layer. I don't know why I have that little smudge of ink. It just proves that I'm a messy stamper. Okay, then I put dimensionals on the back of my flowers that I off stamped, and line that up right there. Here's my other one. And the reason for the off stamping, if you would, is so that when you add your center, the centers are not off stamped when you stamp them. Can you see that? So when you add it to the flower, it really does pop that color. Isn't that pretty? All right, so let's do one more. And put this one here. These little things are hard to keep up with. I keep everything, all my pieces, after I stamp them in a container, and then that way I have them. My last piece that I'm going to do is the little flower, and the flower is not on a square, the yellow flower. Take off the back, and there you have it. Okay, so there's your card, and I did not do this just for the video. I like to have all my pieces ready, do all my stamping, all my big shotting with the framelits, all my cutting of my strips, and just have everything ready to sit down and assemble. That's the fun part. Okay, stay tuned for the next video.